Oh, okay. I'm guessing you can probably hear me now. Hello, welcome to FHE with Chelsea, a place where we cherish, watch over, comfort one another, and gain instruction that we may all sit down in heaven together. Thank you for joining. That's a quick music credit to Peace in Christ by McKenna Hickson. And we will delve into our family home evening. Do I have sound now? Yeah. Okay. Just checking. Thank you. That just seems to be my issue. But anyway, we got it. Okay, so tonight's outline is we are going to have a hymn, Love One Another, followed by a prayer screen that comes up and you can say a prayer in your own space. Our lesson tonight is the conference address given by President Oakes, titled Love Your Enemies. Very excellent address. I'm really excited to get into it. And then we'll have a little activity followed with a hymn and a prayer. So this is Love One Another, followed by a prayer. So that was the Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square singing As I Have Loved You. And we will go right into our lesson. And please forgive like all my layers. Our house got really cold. It got cold in Kentucky today. So I've been a little cold. And so I'm a little casual for tonight. So I apologize for that. So this address by President Oaks is awesome. And I'm really excited to listen to it. So the first question that I would like us to discuss is, what does loving your enemy look like? And I would love to hear some thoughts and ideas as we listen to this first part of his address.
The Lord's teachings are for eternity and for all of God's children. In this message, I will give some examples from the United States, but the principles I teach are applicable everywhere. We live in a time of anger and hatred in political relationships and policies. We felt it this summer, where some went beyond peaceful protests and engaged in destructive behavior. We feel it in some current campaigns for public offices. Unfortunately, some of this has even spilled over into political statements and unkind references in our church meetings. In a democratic government, we will always have differences over proposed candidates and policies. However, as followers of Christ, we must forego the anger and hatred with which political choices are debated or denounced in many settings. Here's one of our Savior's teachings, probably well known but rarely practiced. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. For generations, Jews had been taught to hate their enemies, and they were then suffering under the domination and cruelties of Roman occupation. Yet, Jesus taught them, love your enemies and do good to them that despitefully use you. What revolutionary teachings for personal and political relationships. But that is still what our Savior commands. In the Book of Mormon we read, For verily, verily, I say unto you, he that hath the spirit of contention is not of me, but is of the devil, who is the father of contention. And he stirreth up the hearts of men to contend with anger, one with another. Loving our enemies and our adversaries is not easy. Most of us have not reached that stage of love and forgiveness, President Hinckley observed, adding, it requires a self-discipline almost greater than we are capable of. But it must be essential, for it is part of the Savior's two great commandments, to love the Lord thy God and to love thy neighbor as thyself. And it must be possible, for he also taught, ask and it shall be given you, seek, and ye shall find. How do we keep these divine commandments in a world where we are also subject to the laws of man? Fortunately, we have the Savior's own example of how to balance his eternal laws with the practicalities of man-made laws. When adversaries sought to trap him with a question about whether Jews should pay taxes to Rome, he pointed to the image of Caesar on their coins and declared, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and unto God the things which be God's. So, we are to follow the laws of men, render unto Caesar, to live peacefully under civil authority, and we follow the laws of God toward our eternal destination. But how do we do this? Especially, how do we learn to love our adversaries and our enemies? The Savior's teaching not to contend with anger is a good first step. The devil is the father of contention, and it is he who tempts men to contend with anger. He promotes enmity and hateful relationships among individuals and within groups. President Thomas S. Monson taught that anger is Satan's tool, for to be angry is to yield to the influence of Satan. No one can make us angry. It is our choice. End of quote. Anger is the way to division and enmity. We move toward loving our adversaries when we avoid anger and hostility toward those with whom we disagree. It also helps if we are even willing to learn from them.
So there is a lot of things to unpack in this first section of his address, and it was absolutely fantastic. I just really, really love President Oaks and his candidness and his frankness. And so I thought it was pretty interesting. So again, the question is, what does loving your enemy look like? And I actually want to give a little reference that I have in the comments on YouTube and on Facebook. So this was a little podcast by Chad Ford, and it was conflict, something to fear or embrace. So he basically made it his, calling in life to help alleviate conflict. And he wrote a book called Dangerous Love. And it's very interesting about conflicts with people and how you resolve them. So I definitely recommend listening to that, because it was very insightful for me, at least, as far as loving enemies. And he gave this little analogy, and I hope he even has it right, but he had two people come up in front of the stage or whatever he was doing, and have their backs to each other and then hit each other with their elbows. And then he said, this is kind of like how conflict is, but one of you turn, so he had the other one turn and face the back of the person. And he said it would always cause this kind of change and shift, why aren't they hitting me back? And cause the other person to turn. So it was kind of a cool thing about listening. So when I think about loving your enemies, I feel like it's cool that he said not getting angry is one of the first steps that you need in loving your enemies, right? And I'm trying to think of where that was even at. In his section. Yeah, the Savior's teaching to not to contend with anger is a good first step. The devil is the father of contention, and it is he who tempts men to contend with anger. And this is not easy, especially for Jensen, because we tend to get pretty feisty. And I definitely have that weakness within me. And so I thought that was a very interesting thing that he said, is not to contend with anger. So I feel like that's a really good first step that he points out. So if you have any ideas or anything about loving your enemies, I would love to hear them. And I guess just one more quick insight of someone that Adam and I talked to once is he was talking about how at work he had a boss that he just hated. And he just was struggling with that. And I guess he was mowing his lawn and he was just fuming, and he thought, okay, I'm not even at work. This is affecting me so much. And so he started praying for him, and he said eventually the anonymity went away. I don't know if I even used that phrase right, but the animosity, that's the right word, sorry, went away. So I feel like that's another thing too, is to start praying for our enemies. And I feel like prayers are really, it's your dad's fault. No, I am not talking about dad. Okay. And no, this was someone else, truly. Somebody else that we were talking to. And so I feel like that's another way too. And it's a lot easier said than done. And I appreciated that he recognized that too, that President Gordon B. Hinckley said it requires a self-discipline almost greater than we are capable of. And so it is very hard and it's not easy. And I'm a very checklist person. So to say oh, this is how you love your enemies. You do A, B, and C. Sometimes it's not really that simple. Ooh, Janice, imagine them sitting in the temple with you. Woo-wee! That is very, very good. And would be very difficult too with our enemies, but I love that idea. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to listen to the next part of his address, and he's going to talk about other ways that we can develop the power to love others. And the question that I have is, how do you get to know someone? It's kind of a simple question, but I feel like we can really delve deep into that. So how can you get to know someone? And we'll listen to this part of his address.
Among other ways to develop the power to love others is the simple method described in a long ago musical. When we are trying to understand and relate to people of a different culture, we should try getting to know them. In countless circumstances, strangers, suspicion, or even hostility give way to friendship or even love when personal contacts produce understanding and mutual respect. An even greater help in learning to love our adversaries and our enemies is to seek to understand the power of love. Here are 3 of many prophetic teachings about this. The prophet Joseph Smith taught that it is a time-honored adage that love begets love. Let us pour forth love, show forth our kindness unto all mankind, end of quote. President Howard W. Hunter taught, quote, the world in which we live would benefit greatly if men and women everywhere would exercise the pure love of Christ, which is kind, meek, and lowly. It is without envy or pride. It seeks nothing in return. It has no place for bigotry, hatred, or violence. It encourages diverse people to live together in Christian love, regardless of religious belief, race, nationality, financial standing, education, or culture, end of quote. And President Russell M. Nelson has urged us to, quote, expand our circle of love to embrace the whole human family, end of quote. An essential part of loving our enemies is to render unto Caesar by keeping the laws of our various countries. Though Jesus' teachings were revolutionary, he did not teach revolution or lawbreaking. He taught a better way. Modern revelation teaches the same, quote, let no man break the laws of the land, for he that keepeth the laws of God hath no need to break the laws of the land. Wherefore be subject to the powers that be, end of quote. And our article of faith, written by the prophet Joseph Smith, after the early saints had suffered severe persecution from Missouri officials, declares, quote, we believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, in obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law, end of quote. This does not mean that we agree with all that is done with the force of law. It means that we obey the current law and use peaceful means to change it. It also means that we peacefully accept the results of elections. We will not participate in the violence threatened by those disappointed with the outcome. In a democratic society, we always have the opportunity and the duty to persist peacefully until the next election. The Savior's teaching to love our enemies is based on the reality that all mortals are beloved children of God. That eternal principle and some basic principles of law were tested in the recent protests in many American cities.
So quite a bit to unpack here as well. So first off, I think it is awesome that he quoted King and I. Super awesome. I'm like, go President Oaks. Plus, I'm a reference girl. And so I really appreciated that he did that. But, wow, a timely reminder. Yes, Janice, when I was doing this, I was like, this is like exactly what we need to hear right now with how like it just fell into place with studying it. And so I really like what 3 quotes he gave from past presidents of the church. Okay, from Liz, hanging out with, crafting with, working alongside someone helps you come to know them some. I've come to know many of the sisters in our ward through different service and craft activities. I love that, Liz. And I think that brings up a good point with getting to know someone is you have to actually take the time to do something with them or to listen to them. And I think it goes back to like you have to have a desire to get to know them truly. And I really appreciate you saying that because I think that is just so awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And it reminded me a little bit of the quote from Ronald Reagan that says there's no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. And I thought that just really fell in line. And listen with intent. Yes, Liz. And you have to be genuine about actually listening. And sometimes they're really bad about that, where it's like, you're not really listening if you're just thinking about what you're going to say. But I tend to be like that. That's how my mind goes. And so sometimes I just have to like turn my own thoughts off and truly listen. And I thought it was cool. Okay. And then Janice. Oh, I love the comments. Okay. Desire and listening with intent. You ladies are right on. Yes. Yes. And so this quote by Howard W. Hunter says, the world in which we live would benefit greatly if men and women everywhere would exercise the pure love of Christ, which is kind, meek, and lowly. It is without envy or pride. It seeks nothing in return. It has no place for bigotry, hatred, or violence. It encourages diverse people to live together in Christian love, regardless of religious belief, race, nationality, financial standing, education, or culture. And I really, really think that is just so awesome. And it just reminds me a little bit of a quote I heard. And I don't even remember where this came from, but it was, pride is concerned with who is right. Humility is concerned with what is right. And that like has always struck me because I'm always like, well, they're right, they're wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. But really, that's pride when we look at it that way. It is about what is doing right, not who is right. And I thought that was cool. And then this, like, I am telling you, like, President Oaks, by the way, PSA, like, is the next prophet unless he dies before, like, anybody else. Anyway, should President Nelson pass away and President Oaks is still around, he's the next prophet. So this line, in a democratic society, we always have the opportunity and duty to persist peacefully until the next election. Okay? Peace, not the other stuff, okay? So I thought that was really, really cool that he said that and very prophetic. So, the last part of his address is he talks about all of the protests and riots that happened with Black Lives Matter. And so he talks about the extremes that some have forgotten that people do have the right in America to peaceably assemble and petition the government. And then on the other extreme, that there were illegal acts and that they were not peaceful. And then he basically like totally downs anarchy. And so anyway, President Oaks, man, you just love him. So I definitely recommend like going and finishing his address. I just don't have that clip. And the last quote that I really want to emphasize from his talk before I do our little activity is loyalty. This was just such an interesting concept. Loyalty to established law instead of temporary allies is the best way to love our adversaries and our enemies as we seek unity in diversity. Holy cow, I was like, what? That is like so cool. Hey! Yes, he is. And thank you so much for joining. Happy Latter-day Saint. President Oaks is amazing, and he is just the bomb. And thank you so much for joining on. And I just really thought that was interesting that he said really like it comes down to loyalty to established law instead of temporary allies is the best way to love our adversaries and our enemies as we seek unity and diversity. Mind-blowing. I mean, just so awesome. And so President Oaks' talk was the bomb. And so this is my little activity tonight. So it actually worked out very well because I could raid my daughter's candy from Halloween. And Jenna came in. She's like, what are you doing with those, Mom? I'm like, I'll show you the video of how I took your candy. Anyway, so this is bubble gum. And what you do, if you're doing this as a family, is you're going to see who can blow the biggest bubble. So I'm using 2 of them. And what it is, and here, I'm gonna post the, oh, this is like the hardest gum to chew. We're gonna check in a second. I'm gonna post how I found this in this little blog. And so, I probably should have only used one. So, I'm so sorry. So the activity is don't pop the bubble. And it's comparing anger with blowing a bubble. And that the trick is to keep your anger, right? And President Oaks teaches Renee Craig. Yes, Renee, that gum is hard. It is super hard. I really should have done one, but I was like, I need to do a big bubble. So now I can't talk. Anyway, so it's talking about self-control. And in, like, again, in President Oaks' talk, he totally, he quotes President Monson that taught that anger is Satan's tool. And to be angry is to yield to the influence of Satan. No one can make us angry. It is our choice. But I do think that we have, oh, I'm sorry your comments are so delayed. That just kind of happens. But anyway, but I do think that we are human and we feel emotions, and it's just about having temperance with our emotions. So I'm going to see how big of a bubble I can get without popping it. Okay. And again, you can have a little contest if you're doing this as a family. I should have just done one. Okay. Maybe I need to do this, like, after the hymn. So you all don't have to watch me chew. I'm about got it, I think. I think it can show, too, anger is not comfortable. Bridle your passions, right? Yes, exactly. And it's better to just spit the anger out. And it tastes sweet, but after a while, it gets real nasty. This gum gets so nasty. Never try 2020, yeah. Okay, here we go. Oh, I wasn't a very good bubble at all. And from Liz, I think Elder Bednar gave a talk, let none be offended, maybe something like that, about how we react and act. Yes, we choose to be offended or not, and how we act after. Yes, and that is a fantastic reference. Okay. I'm going to see if I can get a bigger bubble. That's as big as I can get it. But anyway, that's a fun little activity you can do. And We're going to have our closing hymn and a prayer. And then I will maybe try and do one more bubble as I'm trying to do during the hymn. So the hymn is Dear to the Heart of the Shepherd by the Tabernacle Choir. And then we'll have a hymn. Then we'll have a prayer. Sorry. And then we'll wrap up. I can do this. Okay. So I just want to get caught up on these comments a little bit. Happy Latter-day Saint. That is so awesome that you're in Indiana. I'm in Kentucky. So border states. That's great. And then from Lynette, who is my mom. No matter the outcome of the election, I am praying for peace. Yes. And I think that's something we all definitely need to be doing. So I've learned a lot with this gum in comparison to anger. One, it gets really uncomfortable after a while. And two, it really doesn't help you feel better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This is teaching me a lot, which is good because I have anger problems. But, okay, I'm going to try one more time to do a big bubble. And then we'll wrap up. Oh, let me do one more time. I want to do a big one. Okay, and this shows too why you shouldn't let anger pop. And that is so cool that your family's from Louisville. Small world. We'll have to see if we have any like mutual friends going on. Okay, so now I got this all over my face. Again, a lesson about not letting your anger boil over. But I just want to express my appreciation for everyone for coming and participating in FHE with Chelsea. I really do appreciate it. Every single person. I'm so impressed, Bubbles. Thank you. That's all over my face. But that's okay. And next week, we're going to be studying Sustainable Societies by Elder D. Todd Christofferson. Another fantastic talk. I mean, conference was just so great. And it's always great. But this conference was especially great. So in the meantime, please go ahead and subscribe or share this so that more people can join in the fun. But in the meantime, let us all press on. And remember this, kindness begins with me. See you. Pray for our country. And we'll see you later.